In August 1990, the world stood on the edge of chaos. A blazing summer sun scorched the sands of the Arabian Peninsula, and under that heat, history was being rewritten. Iraq, led by its powerful and controversial president Saddam Hussein, made a decision that would shock the world. Before dawn, Iraqi tanks roared across the Kuwaiti border. Jet fighters screamed overhead. Within just a few hours, the tiny, oil-rich nation of Kuwait had fallen. Saddam declared Kuwait the 19th province of Iraq, calling it an act of reunification. But to the rest of the world, it was a clear act of aggression, a dangerous challenge to the balance of global power. The reasons behind the invasion were as complex as they were controversial. Iraq had just emerged from an 8-year war with Iran, a conflict that drained its economy and left the country buried in debt. Saddam accused Kuwait of overproducing oil and driving down global prices, costing Iraq billions of dollars in lost revenue. He also claimed Kuwait was stealing oil from a shared field known as the Rumaila Reservoir. But beneath all those claims lay one simple truth. Saddam needed power, resources, and leverage in a region that was already a geopolitical tinderbox. As the invasion continued, the world reacted in disbelief. Kuwaiti citizens fled in terror. Some escaped across the desert into Saudi Arabia. Others were taken hostage by Iraqi forces. International news networks broadcast shocking images of burning buildings, fleeing families, and soldiers occupying the streets of Kuwait City. It was a moment that changed global television. War, for the first time, was being broadcast live into people's living rooms. Then came the world's response. The United Nations moved swiftly, condemning Iraq's invasion and demanding immediate withdrawal. The United States, under President George H.W. Bush, took the lead, organizing what would become one of the largest military coalitions in history. Over 35 nations joined forces, including Britain, France, Canada, Egypt, and even some Arab states like Saudi Arabia and Syria. Their mission was clear: defend Saudi Arabia, liberate Kuwait, and restore international order. Operation Desert Shield began in August 1990. Thousands of U.S. and allied troops arrived in Saudi Arabia, creating a massive buildup of military power along the border. It was a show of force the world hadn't seen since World War II. For months, soldiers trained in the unforgiving desert heat. Fighter jets, tanks, and advanced radar systems flooded into the region. Tensions grew as diplomacy failed. Saddam refused to withdraw, believing the U.S. wouldn't dare attack. Then, on January 17, 1991, the silence of the desert was shattered. In the dark early hours, the sky above Baghdad exploded with light. Operation Desert Storm had begun. Cruise missiles launched from ships in the Persian Gulf. Stealth bombers, invisible to radar, struck with deadly accuracy. For 43 days, the coalition carried out one of the most precise and relentless air campaigns in military history. Power plants, communication centers, airfields, and command bunkers were systematically destroyed. Iraqi defenses crumbled under the storm of technology and coordination. For the people of Baghdad, it was a nightmare. Explosions rocked the city night after night. Families huddled in basements as air raid sirens wailed. The world watched a CNN broadcast live footage from the rooftops: green tracer fire, orange flames, and the haunting voice of journalists describing what they saw in real time. It was the first truly televised war, changing forever how the world witnessed conflict. After weeks of relentless bombing, the next phase began: the ground war. On February 24, 1991, coalition ground forces crossed the Saudi-Kuwaiti border. In just 100 hours, the Iraqi army collapsed. Surrendering soldiers came in waves, some barefoot, hungry and exhausted. The once feared Republican Guard was overwhelmed by the superior strategy and technology of the coalition. By February 28th, President Bush declared a ceasefire. Kuwait was free. But victory came at a heavy price. Oil wells were set ablaze by retreating Iraqi troops. The black smoke rose so thick it turned day into night across the Kuwaiti desert. For months, the fires burned, over 700 oil wells spewing smoke, ash, and toxic fumes into the sky. Environmental devastation spread across the Gulf, leaving scars still visible decades later. The war also exposed new realities about modern combat. Technology, once a background factor, had become the dominant force. Smart bombs, stealth jets, GPS targeting, this was warfare redesigned for the 21st century. America had proven its global dominance, but it also set a precedent. Wars would now be fought with precision, data, and media. Yet for many, questions lingered. Why was Saddam Hussein still in power after the war? Why didn't the coalition march into Baghdad to remove him? President Bush and his advisors decided against it, fearing a prolonged conflict, regional instability, and the collapse of Iraq itself. That decision, however, would shape the Middle East for decades to come, setting the stage for future conflicts, including the Iraq War of 2003. The Gulf War also had deep human costs. Thousands of Iraqi soldiers and civilians were killed. Many Kuwaiti citizens disappeared or were taken prisoner. Even coalition troops suffered the mysterious Gulf War syndrome, illnesses linked to exposure to chemical weapons and environmental toxins. Families were left to deal with the unseen wounds of war, trauma, loss, and unanswered questions. Politically, the war shifted global power. The United States emerged as the undisputed superpower of the post-Cold War world. The Soviet Union, already collapsing, watched from the sidelines. The success of Desert Storm became a symbol of American military superiority and international cooperation. But it also began a new era of interventionism, where global conflicts would often call for U.S. involvement. Economically, the war reshaped oil politics. Prices fluctuated wildly as markets reacted to every explosion and ceasefire. Kuwait's reconstruction took years, costing billions of dollars. Meanwhile, defense spending soared, and companies like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Raytheon became household names. War had once again proven profitable for some, as even others paid with their lives. In the end, the Gulf War was more than just a military operation. It was a turning point, a moment when global alliances, technology, and media converged to create a new world order. It redefined how nations fought, how people saw war, and how the world understood power. And though the fires of Kuwait were eventually extinguished, their smoke left a permanent mark on history. A reminder that in the desert, victory and tragedy can share the same horizon. The Gulf War was over, but the echoes of its thunder still rolled through the sands of time.